Hey, this is Kaja Elliott, Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming, and this is the As Told By podcast. All right, welcome back to this week's episode. This is a bonus episode, so this is not our regular Tuesday for release, but how could I not give you a bonus episode? I'm here on location in beautiful, sunny Austin, Texas, with a great episode for you today. I'm so excited. So some of you who follow me on social media have heard me mention this company. And if you're somebody who has dined out with me in the last year, you absolutely have seen me using this service because I'm such a big fan of the platform. I reached out and asked if I could come interview them, and they said yes. So today I am in Austin, Texas with Johann Moonesinghe, co-founder and CEO of InKind. Since launching in 2017, InKind has infused over $160 million in capital to some of the most successful restaurant groups in the world and currently serves over 1.5 million users, delivering rewarding dining experiences through their app and creating pathways to financial sustainability for restaurants. So Johann, welcome to the As Told By podcast.
Thanks so much, Kaja, for coming out to Austin, and thank you very much for being an InKind user and ambassador. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So let's start with the simplest, most obvious question at a high level, because we'll get into the specifics as we go further. But tell people what InKind is.
Yeah, there's sort of two sides to InKind. From the consumer perspective, it's an app that you go and you pay your bill at a restaurant. We invented the easiest way to pay, which you've seen when you pay your bill, and you get rewarded for doing so. So we have the best restaurants in the platform, in the country on there, and you go in and you pay your bill, and typically you get up to like 20% back when you use the app that then you can use at any of the other. I think we're up to 2,200 restaurants now on the platform. Mm-hmm. And then we often throw in some offers like, hey, this month here's $50 off your bill, if you go into certain restaurants. And really what we've done on the consumer side is we've created a loyalty platform for the best restaurants in the country. So you can go in to a Michael MINA restaurant or a José Andrés restaurant or to Matt Horn's restaurants and get some sort of a bonus or loyalty reward for dining there. And then on the other side, and that's why, you mentioned we have 1.5 million users. I think it's now up to almost 1.7 million.
Okay.
We're adding 150,000 a month or so to the platform because it's kind of a no-brainer. It's like you're going to eat at great restaurants. You're going to discover great restaurants. Why not get rewarded to do so? The way that we add the restaurants to the platform is we actually finance them. So I can tell you a lot more about that later, but we discovered that restaurant finance was broken, and my husband and I started a restaurant 10 years ago to really, really understand restaurants and finance for restaurants, and realized that it was broken, and we figured out a different way to finance restaurants, a clever way, a better way to finance restaurants, and out of that, we're able to add the best restaurants in the country because every restaurant needs capital to grow, yes. Right? And you're either going to get it from a bank or from investors or using your own money. We figured out a better approach than any of those options, and so therefore we're able to get the best restaurants on the platform, which gives the consumers, access to the best restaurants.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we definitely are going to dig more into the details on that, but I love the overview. So just in doing my research, I found that you've got a fintech background and financial tech, not use tech acronyms, but a fintech background. But you also have a background in the restaurant industry and are an avid lover of just the experience overall of dining out, which feels to me like the perfect combination of what you would need to be in this kind of a business. What's your background in each of these areas?
Yeah, I love food. Right. And my mom is an amazing chef. She's not like a professional chef, but she cooks.
She cooks well.
She cooks well.
We'll take the title.
And she shows her love through cooking. And we grew up, with great food. And My dad would go to the grocery store every morning to buy me a fresh baguette for my lunch sandwich, at school.
I love that. You went with the best school lunch.
I did. A lot of my friends asked to share my school lunch.
But they did.
And when I was in high school, I was really into computers, and I was helping people with their computers, and I was programming, and I was doing some work on the side. And I would spend all of my money eating at high-end restaurants. And my parents, my mom was a teacher. My dad sort of worked 3 jobs. And they were like, "What are you doing? You're spending $100 eating out? That's crazy." And the reason was because I had such good food at home. I was like, if I'm going to eat out, I want to eat even better food, that I can get at home. And went to college, studied computer science, ended up working in that. And then my college roommate said, "Hey, you want to start a tech company?" And I said, "Sure." So I moved back to LA, and we started this tech company, and it failed after probably 4 months. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't have access to, mentors, advisors. Our families couldn't help us, So we ended up folding the company and then moving to Boulder, Colorado, and being part of an incubator called Techstars. And Techstars, it was the very first year of Techstars, and they really helped us learn how to run a business, right? So we were connected with mentors and advisors and investors and people that had built businesses before, and it was an incredible experience for us. We ended up selling that business. And then I love food, like I said. So I started investing in restaurants. And I invested in about 20 restaurants, not sort of knowing anything about restaurants or their, operations or anything. But I was like, I love food, and people are opening restaurants in my community. I love having restaurants in the community. So let me invest in those. And of the 20, I think 3 paid me back, 17.
Right now.
17 were not great.
That's a tricky ROI structure. Okay.
Yeah, very tricky. So my husband, Andy, he's from England. He's a lawyer. He moved to DC where we were living. And we decided, through my experience going through Techstars, it really helped me as a tech entrepreneur. What if we open a restaurant incubator? And we bring chefs in and restaurateurs in and bring mentors in, and we teach them how to run a restaurant. And hopefully then when we invest in those restaurants, they'll be successful. And so for 5 years, he and I ran this restaurant incubator. It was a big space in downtown DC. It had a bakery and a bar and a speakeasy and 2 full-service restaurants.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we were there till 2 a.m. every day, And we ended up learning that restaurant finance was broken, and we needed to figure out a better way to do that. And that's what really inspired us to create InKind. And we also learned that it's more than just funding a restaurant, because restaurants are really, really, really hard to run, like very difficult. You have to be good at so many things that nobody can be good at all of those things.
Right.
And, we were running the restaurant the first year. I think we lost like $500,000,
All right.
Yeah. And we're like pretty smart and working really, really hard, but that still wasn't good enough. Right. And so I'll give you an example. Like one of my friends was working for the government. The government got furloughed for 3 weeks. So he said, "Hey, can I come work at your restaurant?" I said, "Absolutely." And he, he's a really smart guy. He went to Yale and Harvard, and he opens up our invoices, and he's like, "Johann, why are you paying so much for chicken?" And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm paying for chicken. I'm trying to run this 18,000 square foot restaurant space.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I think that, I can buy chicken cheaper at the grocery store than you're paying for your chicken." And, it's just one of those things. It's like, you have to be good at negotiating pricing. You have to be good at managing employees. You have to be good at social media. You have to be good at, customer service, like
all the hats.
Yeah. And so what we realized at InKind is, I continue to own restaurants. I own 2 here in Austin. I have one in Scottsdale that's being remodeled, opening next week.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, at Etta. We have an Etta in Chicago. We have one under construction in Vegas, one under construction in DC. And so I continue to build and operate and own my own restaurants because I need to feel like the struggles of owning and operating a restaurant so that we can build better product and be more helpful to our restaurants, right?
Yeah.
Our North Star is if our restaurants do well, like this will work. And everything we do is to help the restaurants. And that's the whole business. I think like I've done a lot of finance and I've invested in a bunch of tech companies and other things after my exit, but really what I think the key to InKind success is that we finance a restaurant, but we also help them. We're standing there next to them. We're their partners. So when things go wrong, we hopefully can go and help, right?
Yeah.
And we can, during COVID, Andy, since he's a lawyer, he got on the phone with all of the landlords for, the restaurants that we were working with and renegotiated leases, right? That's not something...
Oh, well, that's helpful. Very.
Yeah, it's not something your bank is going to do, right?
Right.
But, and because we see so many restaurants, last month, I think we signed agreements to fund 430 restaurants, right? So we just see so much that we can be helpful to the restaurants.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's dig into that now. So we've kind of set the landscape for how InKind came to be and what your mission is. But let's go into the specifics of the mission a bit more, because you did mention it's twofold, with some specific wins for the business owners, operators, but then some really nice specific wins for the diners. So can you split out, right, each side of the house?
Yeah, we for the restaurants, I think it's a clear win. I mean, if you look at the restaurants on our platform, they're not, desperate restaurants that are struggling. They're actually great restaurants, and every restaurant needs capital to grow or to open, right? And every restaurant on our platform, we try to have, the best restaurants, right? So in Oakland, Matt Horn makes incredible barbecue. He's on the platform.
And Burdell, might I add, 2024 Food and Wine Best Restaurant, not in California, in America, is on InKind's platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Last U.S. Open was this weekend, right? And Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift went to an InKind restaurant called Medusa.
Nice.
And that was in the New York Post this morning, right? So there are great restaurants on the platform, and we really, because the restaurant Ember that I have here in Austin, the reason we opened it was because we have 160 employees at InKind. And a lot of them are great at marketing or finance or software development, but don't really understand restaurants. So I opened a restaurant here in Austin for the purpose of having them go through the experience of opening a restaurant and thinking about, what can I do better? How can I build better that will help support the restaurants that we work with, right? And the mission of InKind is really to support entrepreneurship. That is like what I strongly believe in. I think that restaurants are, phenomenal in that people who want to work hard can, if they have access to capital, which we help with, open a restaurant, and with a little bit of help, because it's too hard to operate on your own, and hopefully we can help with that too. And then with systems and food buying, for example. So like what we did was we signed up, because we have now so many restaurants that we work with, and we negotiated with a group buying organization so that our restaurants, if they want to, they can buy at the same prices that Cheesecake Factory buys at, right? Their product, right? So things like that we can use at our scale. So we opened the Ember, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. The opening was delayed 6 months, permits, everything. And that was great, because we were then reminded of how hard this is. And so we need to be extremely supportive of the restaurants that are on the platform, right? And ultimately, restaurants can make great money, but the important thing is that money doesn't go back to investors or to the bank. That money should go to the owner and to the employees that are working there, right? Because that creates a financially sustainable model. Yeah. And ultimately, that's what our restaurant does. Our funding does. Like, our restaurants don't close. They don't close because people are making money, right? And the number one reasons that restaurants close, I was taught this by a mentor who was in our incubator. He said, and he has like 30-something restaurants in D.C., he said, the number one reason a restaurant closes is because we go and raise money from investors to open a restaurant. we have to pay the investors out of our profits. And let's say we raised $5 million to build out a restaurant. It takes us forever to get $5 million in profit, which we're paying back to the investor, so the operator's never making money.
Can't get ahead.
Yeah, and after 5 years, the operator's like, this sucks. I've been working 100 hours a week. Let me give the keys back to the landlord, and they close. And so that's the restaurant side. On the consumer side, it's really about discoverability of great restaurants and making the payment workflow extremely easy. So when you go in, it's easy to check out. You tip through the app, you close out your bill through the app. It's a better experience than paying with your credit card. And on the back end, what we do is we start to ingest the items that someone's buying so that we can make better recommendations to them about where to go on the network, right? And InKind customers are actually the best customers going into a restaurant, right? They spend more than other guests that are going into a restaurant. So it's a good consumer base. So the restaurants love InKind customers because they know that they're going to, spend and they're going to tip well. And so the servers love that. And then they treat InKind customers even better, right? Which means they get more tips, right? So it's like this virtuous cycle that happens. So that's, I think that on the diner side, it's it's a no-brainer, right? It's like, they're great restaurants, you're going to get value. And from the restaurant's perspective, they're like, this is also a no-brainer. We're getting amazing diners that are coming in who love food and are tipping well.
Absolutely. I'll just tell you, look, my own little personal fun InKind story. So I was traveling with my work team organization for an offsite. We were in DC. And as part of the offsite, we were there for 3 days. Each individual team got to break out and do their own team dinner. But of course, there's budgets for those things, right? And so people in my team kind of know outside of work, I have this whole life of moving in the food space. So I'm like, Kaja, it's your job, right? I raised my hand and they're like, you got the job. So I'm scouring the DC restaurant scene to figure out where to go. And it was right around the time Bronze was nominated as a semifinalist for James Beard. So shout out to Keem Hewley and the team at Bronze. And so I'm like, this is where we need to go. And so I'm looking at the budget and I'm in conversation with them and trying to put together a family style menu and knowing the budget is not going to come in right. And I happened to be on the app just for my own dining and I saw Bronze was on InKind and I'm like, this is it, because sporadically you all will run these promotions where if you load X dollar amount with your dining credit or your wallet credit, we'll give you a bonus. So for example, if you spend $2,500 to load your wallet, we'll give you $3,200 to spend. And I was like, there's the solution. That was exactly what I did. And I was able to give my team, a dining experience that was probably $1,600 to $1,800 above the budget because I had access to what the platform was offering. So after that, I'm like, I'm sold.
Absolutely. That was awesome the way you treated your team there. What sometimes people do is if they have a team budget, they actually go and they spend the team budget. So let's say your budget's $2,000 and you spend it in the InKind app and you pay with InKind app, you pay the $2,000, you expense the $2,000 bill, and then you get $400 back for yourself to go take, a friend or family member out. And that's, I think a lot of people use InKind that way too. Like if you're a salesperson, you're taking people out for dinner all the time.
Yes.
You might as well go to a great restaurant, pay with InKind, and then get 20% back to take your friends and family out.
Oh, yeah. It's listen, we'll talk about that more, but if you're not on it, why aren't you on it? If you're dining out and you're not using the app, you need to be. However, I wanted to ask you about what owners have shared with you as far as what it's meant to them to have you all as a funding partner, because like you said, who the restaurant industry attracts quite naturally are creatives, right? People who have found their, synchronicity in the kitchen. They're not accountants. They're not financiers. They're not maybe coming from families where entrepreneurship was prevalent. So they just know, hey, I know how to cook this and I know how to do this thing really well, but not really understanding the business centric part of that sometimes. And, having this kind of backing, I'm sure, has given them lots of additional bandwidth to be involved in those creative aspects. But it sounds like it also sometimes is the difference between them being able to keep a brick and mortar format versus maybe having to default to something else. What have they shared about that experience?
Yeah, we have a wide variety of restaurants that we fund. So we'll fund José Andrés, who is an incredible operator, has an amazing CFO, and he's also, Jose himself is extremely creative and talented chef, which we all know, but he has an amazing team of people that surround him so that he'll always be successful. But that's not most restaurants. And to your point, when we had our incubator, we had husband and wife, Tom and Camilla, and they make literally the best croissants you've ever had. Unbelievable. They're in DC. Their restaurant, their bakery's called Pluma by Bluebird Bakery.
Okay.
Amazing, life-changing croissants. Literally, like.
Well, you would know getting a baguette in your lunch. You would know life-changing croissants when you saw them. Yeah.
Life-changing, and they're extremely creative, and they won't mind me saying this. They're not accountants, For them, like, creating a P&L, very difficult, right? And you can't expect them to. Just like you can't expect your accountant to make life-changing croissants. And so what we've really figured out, I think, is to embrace and celebrate the creative of, because without that we wouldn't have those croissants, right? And this world is a better place because of those croissants. Yes. So how do we step in and help them with the accounting side, dealing with their landlord, renegotiating leases, how do you do your financing, right? All that kind of stuff we can help them with. So let them create and grow their brand. And now they're opening I think they're opening a third location now, and then they're opening a pizza place. And so, they called me and they said, hey, what do you think of this? And I helped them find a space, and then I helped them finance it. And, and I think that's kind of how we really want to be. And we tell the restaurants, fortunately now we're so big, I don't get to have dinner with every restaurant owner. That was my favorite thing. Yeah. And
it's personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best restaurant experience I've ever had, I'll say, is, and I eat at, you can imagine, many Michelin 3-star restaurants all the time. And when I'm eating out, I often have 3 dinners a night, because I'm eating at restaurants. But one of the best experiences I ever had was a mother and daughter team in DC. This was early on, and I ate at their pop-up, and I was like, this food's incredible. And they said, yeah, we're having a really hard time because we want to open a restaurant, but nobody is willing to finance us. Nobody believes in us. Mom was a refugee from Burma, and they ended up opening because we funded them. We were literally the only people, and then they got nominated for a James Beard Award, and everybody was like, Johann, how did you guys get in that deal? I said, because none of you guys wanted to finance them, because they weren't the type of people that you think would run a restaurant. And the first week they were opened, I think Andy and I went in for dinner, and the mom came out of the kitchen and she explained every item that was on the menu, and she sat with us as we ate, and it was such a powerful experience, related to her childhood in Burma and growing up, and that was such an incredible experience, right? And I think that's what motivates me, right? Like José Andrés, Danny Meyer, Noble 33, these are big groups. Do they need InKind? No, right? Like, they'll be fine without InKind. They like InKind, we're happy. But the independent restaurant, the mom and pop, the person who would be struggling without InKind, right? Those are really, I think, why we wake up every day and love doing what we do. And that's the mission of it. We started with, we knew that restaurants are super important to the community. We knew that. And we also knew that they fail a lot and that it's a really hard business. So our idea was, okay, if we can try to make this a financially sustainable business for the owners, then we'll continue to have great restaurants in our communities.
Yes.
And the best restaurant owners, the chefs, are creatives, exactly like you said. And we can't expect that a creative is also going to be great at running a business, right? Like, because that's not the point, right? And it's not to maximize profit, right? Like, because then we wouldn't have great restaurants.
Right.
We'd have a lot of McDonald's, right? Like, and and so that's I think what's so cool about InKind is that we're actually able to support the independent restaurant owner in a way that helps them, you know, and then there's a whole another layer to this, which I don't think we were going to talk about on the podcast, but I feel like sitting here in my office, and you can see behind me there's a picture of my brother.
Yes.
And my brother was killed 2 years ago here in Austin, and he was a founder of the company with me, and we were very, very close because when you start a company together, you know, and it's 10 years now we've been doing this, like it's a saw each other every day. We lived right next to each other, and he was he when he was killed, he was killed by police at his own house on his front porch. And if you look at the statistics here in Austin, a large majority of, I think it's 10 out of the last 10 people killed by police have been brown or black men. And Austin is not, you know, a predominantly brown or black town.
Right.
And it really, I think, reinvigorated or doubled down our efforts to fund people that don't have access to capital, because the world is sort of unfair in itself, right? And my brother was super, super great kid, like very, very gentle, nice, really. He bought a farm in Africa during COVID and was building a school and a medical clinic. And
wow.
He just really, and there was a kid he met at In-N-Out in the drive-through line and helped him start a business of car detailing and helped him build his website. And, you know, like that was my brother. And I think a lot of what we do now is to honor him, but also what I just realized, you know, because we're trying to figure out how do you deal with this, like, you know, issue and gun violence in general.
Yeah.
And if you can create economic opportunities in low-income areas, which restaurants are a great way to do that, we can reduce gun violence, right? So now it's like, it's just super, super clear what InKind and me and our family and the team here at InKind can do to help solve big problems. You know, it's not just about funding a restaurant. It's actually, we can change communities. We can save lives by giving people opportunity, right? And to open and run their own restaurants and employ people. And so that's at this point, InKind's a big company. You know, we fund thousands of restaurants and hundreds of millions of dollars, but the mission, I think, is more important now than it ever was. And as we grew the business, we started funding bigger and bigger groups, and that's because it's easier to fund a bigger group, right? And it's more profitable to fund a bigger group. And with my brother's death, I think it refocused us back to what do we really care about. We don't really care about funding a big restaurant group. Like, what we really care about is how do we help the individual entrepreneur. Like, so many people, you can think about immigrants who move to America, and they open a restaurant, right? Because and how many people are employed by restaurants?
Yes.
Right? And
generationally speaking.
Yes, generationally speaking. And there's still a lot of injustice that I think that we can also help to solve, right? So we're committed to funding underrepresented minorities, women, LGBTQ folks, veterans, right? People that don't typically have access to capital, and it's more risk because they're independent restaurants that don't have access to capital. And so if you don't have access to capital, it's hard to run a restaurant. So we stand next to them and we say, you know what, we're going to help you open.
Yeah.
And then once you open, we're going to help you be successful, right? And ultimately, like, yeah, that's great for the business, but it also has all of these other effects. Like, reducing gun violence.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that. I had come across that information in my research, so thank you for sharing it. And it's amazing to see as this continues to grow and thrive, right, that your brother's contributions are going on, living legacy.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't think I've talked about it on a podcast. I hate talking about it.
Yeah.
We were very, very close. We saw each other every day. He's my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm realizing it's a really important thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was just at the White House 2 weeks ago, meeting with their Gun Violence Prevention Center,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about what InKind can do, and they were like, "This is great. We need a company with the resources that you guys have and the reach that you have involved in this, right?" And we're all about our. When you walked into the office, I'll show you on the way out, but there's a big mural, and it has our one of our core values, and it says triple win.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually in that mural there's my brother and his dog Lululemon, who and I'll show you that. But triple win is so important to us, right? Every decision we make is like, how is this a win for every stakeholder, right? And that's the lens also of gun violence that we're trying to reduce. We're not like, as a family, we're not like, we want to take everyone's guns away. Rajan was a gun owner. My brother Mark's a gun owner. I'm not a gun owner, but it's about how do you create solutions where everybody comes out ahead. And that's what InKind was. When we started the business, it could have been very easy to just be a predatory lender. It would have been very easy. I'll lend you money.
Yeah.
Payday loan, basically. It's going to put you out of business eventually. But I'll get my money back. I'll make some interest, and then you're going to go out of business eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not sustainable. And it's also, if I put you out of business, there's 30 people that are losing their jobs.
They're out too.
And they're out, right?
Yeah.
And so it took us a long time. It took us 10 years to build the company because we said we're going to build more slowly, but we're going to make sure that every stakeholder wins, right, as we create this business. And today, I think that's true. I think the consumer wins. I think the restaurant wins. And InKind wins too.
Yeah. What you talk about, it just highlights to me the responsibility that we all individually have. And sometimes we maybe don't realize how much of that we have when it comes to our behavior around restaurants, right? So for someone like me who's doing this podcast and also, is more closely connected to the food media side of things, but also just as a diner and as a person who creates digital content, who shares information about restaurants, the way we reference them when we have a great or even a not so great experience, keeping in mind that it's not just this nebulous thing that you write about, but there are people, right? Families, employees that are potentially in position to be impacted by how we speak about restaurants, what we share about restaurants. And, of course, every experience is not going to be stellar, right? But there's a way to communicate that and to give feedback that's truly constructive, and to vote with your dollars, in cases where it's appropriate, that takes into account that restaurants are businesses, but they are actually things with living, breathing, things connected to them in people. And so I always try just in my own digital content I put out and things around food. If I don't have a great experience, I just don't say anything. You'd never know I was there. Right. I would rather tell you, I had a friend of mine, Diane de Guzman at Eater SF, say on a previous episode, I'd rather tell you where to go versus where not to go. And I think what you all are doing well is absolutely creating, it sounds like a long list of places to go, but, starting with the most obvious, you mentioned that you all own Ember here in Austin. I got a chance to stop by Ember last night. So, boy, what an experience. First of all, beautiful space, beautiful area of town. I love the layout, but I felt like I got a real education, particularly around, is it the Jasper?
Yeah.
Yes, the Jasper, which is a very specific type of fire-based cooking oven. You mentioned that it was given to you all by José Andrés. Talk a little bit about the history of that, and then I'll tell you what I thought of the food last night.
Yeah, we so this oven called the I call it Jasper. I think it's Jasper. I was corrected
Okay.
because it's Spanish, but we it's this live fire cooking oven. Very hard to get, especially during COVID. And then next to it is what's called a Basque grill, which is like a charcoal grill that you can that's not contained in an oven, so you can like grill steaks and things like that on it. And we have the only one here in Austin, and José Andrés, I think his like cousin or something, is the importer, so he was able to help us get it. And then he came and tasted all the food when we opened, and he's such a wonderful person. He came to the restaurant and he said, "Oh, I'll just have a glass of white wine." And I said, "Guys, send him the whole menu, send him cocktails." And he literally was like licking the plate, it was, and it meant so much to the team. He's just such an inspirational human, and it was incredible. And yeah, so we wanted to create this live fire cooking because I've eaten from that Jasper oven, other places that I've eaten at, and I tell the team that, the food is phenomenal. I actually think
it is phenomenal.
Tell me about your dinner last night.
Where do I start? There were so many things that stood out to me. I'm not a huge caviar person, and when I've had it, pretty agnostic. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's definitely not anything I would ever order on a menu. And they served me the little caviar bites, which come in those little masa cups, which I thought was just such a cute and creative way. But that masa really lent like an additional flavor to the caviar. I didn't think I was going to like that. Loved it. I had the broccolini, which came in, if I'm remembering the name right, ajo blanco, which is like, it was almost like a garlic hummus in texture, right? That the broccolini was sitting in. It had like the grilled pepitas and onions. That was amazing. But I'll tell you, the standout of the night for me, lots of things stood out, but the standout of the night for me was the beef fat crispy potatoes. So good. So good. I took some home. I didn't eat the full order there, but I took some back to the hotel with me. And even though they weren't like crisp when they came right out, in service, they were still super good. They had that like chipotle aioli that they were laid on top of. I had filet. I had beautiful cocktails. I had a plantain sundae. I've been eating plantains all my life. It would never have occurred to me to make a sundae out of it. So I had a plantain sundae. There was caramel with that. Mexican caramel that has that cajeta goat's milk profile flavor to it. So I had the best dinner. But what I loved about it is, true to the name and the cooking style through the Jasper was that everything was touched by fire, right? They talked to me about the beans, and yet shout out to Chris, the GM. He gave me such a good overview of the restaurant and the menu, but even things like down to the coffee beans that were profiled in one of the cocktails I had, even those are being roasted there to really infuse that flavor in the tequilas and the things that they're being paired with. Things were charred. You can see the flames, right? I had a chef's counter seat, which I love. You go to a restaurant, get you a chef counter seat. You be part of the action. It's like dinner and a show. But I love that true to the name fire and the grilling and the roasting, the coyote squash that came with the filet. Everything had kind of stood to the flame, which I loved. To me, it was right on brand with the name. So I had a great time at Ember. Can y'all tell? I had a great time at Ember.
Thank you. Yeah. And if you go to Ember's website, you can download a $50 off offer and use InKind, and there you go. The one thing I agree with you. The plantain sundae is actually a cool story because it was actually a guest who was there, and we were doing a side of plantains, and we had ice cream. And the guest said, "Can you make me an ice cream sundae with plantains?" And I was actually really, really proud of the team because I think a lot of places would be like, not really, we don't do that. And the chef was like, absolutely, let me, Chef Bryce, he's like, that's a great idea. Let me try that. And he made the guest a ice cream sundae out of plantains, and it was a hit. And so now it's on the menu.
Yes.
And I think that's the beauty of Ember. We have great food. It's a beautiful environment. It was designed, our designer, restaurant designer, is actually our CTO of InKind. His name's Brian. His wife is Mira. And Mira was a costume designer and an opera singer and a woodworker. And she has 2 kids, lovely kids. And so she sort of stopped working to have the kids. And they live here in Austin. And I was like, hey, we're designing out this restaurant. She's like, I can do that. So she learned CAD. She designed out the restaurant. So we have a beautiful restaurant, great food. I think we're the top rated restaurant on Google in Austin. But I think the magic to the restaurant is really the hospitality that, that the staff provides. It's the experience. It's that, you want to try an ice cream sundae? Let's make it together, right? Like, that's cool, right? And that guest comes back often to tell his friends, I put this menu together, right? And I think that's what a restaurant is about, right? It's about giving people an experience that they remember.
Yeah.
And I think the Ember team does that really, really, really well, right? They want to make sure that everybody leaves saying, that was such a memorable experience. And then to me, like, that's the beauty of hospitality, right? Yeah. Like, what a great feeling I get when I hear about your dinner last night at Ember, right? And I had nothing to do with it, like the team really took care of you and made sure that it was a memorable experience, because that's in their culture, right? And I think that's why restaurant owners own restaurants, is they want people to have that experience. And so it's really, thank you for telling me that. It makes me feel really, really, really happy.
Yeah, they were super hospitable. Towards the end of the meal, I had so many different things, and I wasn't going to get dessert. And I looked at the menu again, and I was cajoled into getting dessert. And I'm like, okay, when have I ever seen plantain sundaes on the menu? Never. And I was like, can you make a miniature version for me? Because I didn't want to be wasteful, right? And I had seen somebody else's go by, so I knew it was pretty large. And they made me a miniature version. And I was like, thank you. I was able to, engage without being wasteful.
Yeah. The one thing you missed was our Josper chicken. So
I didn't get to that.
Yeah, because people, and even me, I'm like, I'm not going to order chicken on a menu. There's so many more interesting things. That is, in my opinion, the best dish.
Okay.
You have to go back, try it. We have another restaurant called Guest House here in town. It's a 5-minute walk from Ember.
Okay.
Different experience. It's more like, it's a vibe dining restaurant. There's a DJ every night. Everyone said this will never work in Austin, and we opened in March of this year. And in Texas, you publish your alcohol sales every month. We're the number one revenue restaurant in downtown Austin, and it's only been open for 6 months. But it's you should check it out when you're here.
Okay. Y'all heard it. I'm gonna have to do a skirt and spin the block and come on back to Austin. They got it laid out for us. One of the features that you all offer, which I love, is house accounts, right? Because to me, that's like restaurant days of old, when a restaurant is really entrenched in a community. People are not just coming there for their special occasions, but they're just coming on day to day. It's really a gathering place. With the number of restaurants, and people just have such a volume of options to choose from, a house account sounds like a really amazing way for people to commit to places that they're going to spend with long term, but also committing to just being a part of the food community and committing to spending in restaurants as a whole.
Yeah, I appreciate you loving house accounts. We are phasing them out a little bit.
Oh man!
What you can do is you can get sort of a house account across the whole network.
Okay.
And what we found is that that's the consumers like that more, where they can get a bonus that they can use anywhere. There's trade-offs there. As we're growing, I think if we're being candid, our product is getting a little bit confusing because we have so many different ways you can interact with it. And so one of the decisions was, and I have many house accounts because I agree with you, and but just as we're growing, I think people are confused by like, what's the difference between a house account and what's the difference between in-kind cash, and what if I just pay at the restaurant and get 20% back? So we're trying to streamline the product offering to make it a little bit more simple.
Yeah.
And so going forward, it's the basic idea is you can get up to 20% back when you eat at a restaurant, and you can use that across all of the restaurants. And you can, like you said in the beginning, we occasionally have these promotions where you can prepay whatever it is, $1,000, and you get 1,300 or something like that in credit. And so and actually even those prepayments, I would buy them when they come out, because I think we're going to slowly start to phase those out.
Y'all better get into it. Thank you for the tip. I will be hitting the button next time I see it.
Yeah. I think what we'll do, just because we love our customer, our users, right? And so we don't want to take things away from our great users. So what we'll probably always do is like people that are grandfathered in will always get those benefits. But I think as we are growing and adding more people, like, we're trying to simplify a lot of the offerings. But for you, Kasia, we'll always have that.
Thank you, y'all. Y'all heard
Just
it.
text me.
This is good as writing. You also have an initiative since 2023, InKind ESG, which is your environmental, social, and governance effort, which is committed to providing $250 million in funding to underrepresented and underserved restaurant owners by 2025, as well as the Restaurant Owners Alliance, which to me, almost as importantly, provides tactical resources as well. Why did you feel like it was important to carve out that specific kind of intervention?
That was really after my brother's death. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing what we promised to do, and the reason we created the company. And like I said, it was it's easier to fund big restaurants and people that don't really need capital, right? Like, and that's great, and that's important to build a business. But we had to really commit to this initiative, and we built a team internally. My best friend John, who's like family, my parents consider him a son. He runs that initiative, and it's really, really, really important to us and to the family. And Andy and I don't have kids. Rajan didn't have kids. My older brother Mark, who now works with us, he has 3 kids, and so they'll be fine. So really, all of our resources, are now going towards helping support entrepreneurship, right? Especially in low-income communities, and that this is part of that effort. And I hope it's more than $250 million. I hope it's billions of dollars. Because it helps. Like, there was a Wall Street Journal article maybe about a month ago now that said, if you're a poor kid and you grow up around people with jobs, you're more likely to be successful, right? And so then if you grow up around people that don't have jobs, right? So you see that people are working, and there's all kinds of benefits to that. So what we want to do is go and open restaurants in communities that, and nice restaurants. Like, so when you go to Guest House, Ember is amazing. Like, I think the best food in Austin, but Guest House is a vibe. Is the number one restaurant. It's like people want me as the owner. Like, I'm proud of it, both my children, but like Guest House, people are messaging me like, Michael Jordan went there, and like it's true. Like, and I feel a sense of pride around that. I want restaurant owners in poorer communities to also have that sense of pride. So what we're developing, and we hope to launch the pilot next year, is a restaurant that's owned by someone in a community. It's employing as many people in as highly paid jobs as possible. Also teaching skills, right, that are transferable, right? Like, if you go work at McDonald's and you make French fries, that's not a very transferable skill, right? But if you work at a restaurant and you're front of house and you're learning how to make eye contact, right? The soft skills of being a server, that's transferable to a lot of other industries as well. And so that's a lot of what we're going to be doing over the next couple of years is opening these, funding and supporting these incredible restaurants in communities where people don't have access to capital typically. So we'll make sure that it's funded and that there's all of the resources, and then we're building an entrepreneurship center alongside that, so that people can learn, because there's so many people that just didn't have opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, can we give them opportunity? And that's what my brother Rajan would have really, really wanted us to do. And it's suddenly this combination of like, we can do that. InKind now has the resources and scale to do that. And, people can come and learn how to run a restaurant, or they can learn how to, create a pro forma or read a P&L because they want to open another type of business, right? And so we have some great partners that we're working with on that as well. But that's a lot of the next 2 years. Like InKind is a great company, continuing to grow. We're doing really well. I think that's allowing me to shift some of my attention to what I think are the bigger issues, the bigger social issues that we can help to solve.
What's coming next? Well, shout out to InKind and, organizations like InKind. We have a couple in the Bay. La Cocina, Oakland Bloom is another one that really are focused on making the journey to entrepreneurship easier for people who historically have not had access to these paths, right? I have so much respect for what you all are doing from a business perspective. And as a person who spends a lot of time in restaurants, I just get a kick out of the InKind app. So like I have been saying it all interview long, but I will share this information out with the show notes as well. But if you're not on it and you're eating out in restaurants, please do not play yourself. Please go ahead and get yourself subscribed on the InKind app. Tell people where they can find out more about InKind for owners and operators and also diners, and then where they can just find out more about the restaurants.
Yeah, if you go to inkind.com, I think there's a pop-up there too that'll give you some kind of a bonus to go eat at restaurants. And then that's for the diner. Like, obviously you can go to the Apple Store and download the app too, but better to go through like the website, then you get some free money to go eat at restaurants. And you should share in the show notes a referral link. Oh. So you get a little extra credit if somebody downloads the app too. Okay.
If you twist my arm, I will absolutely do that.
We'll do a special, a bigger referral for your listeners.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you're a restaurateur, inkindcapital.com, and you can apply there, give us some more information, and we're really we especially if you're first time restaurant, we love helping first time restaurant owners. We typically don't fund until we're usually the last funding in, because we don't want to, because the way we fund is we buy food and beverage credit in a restaurant. So we don't want to buy it and then the restaurant doesn't open.
Right.
But we can be helpful in, figuring out, how to open the restaurant. And then on, if you have a restaurant already and you want to open another one, I was talking to a amazing restaurateur in Chicago 2 years ago, and her dad was there, and we were chatting, and she was like, "There's no way I can ever open a second restaurant ever." And I said, "I totally get it. Like, you're here all the time. You're even your family, your dad has to come, and help." Like I said, but it actually gets easier if you can open 3 restaurants. So if you have 3 restaurants, you can hire sort of a corporate team, a corporate structure.
Okay.
So you don't have to be in your restaurant every day. If you have one restaurant, you can't do that because there's not enough money from that one restaurant to cover,
operating.
An operating team.
Yeah.
So you have to be there all the time. So I know it sounds daunting when you're treading water in your own one restaurant.
Yeah.
But that's my general advice to people is like, try to get to 3 restaurants, in the group, because then your life, I think, can become a lot easier. 2, 2 is hard. So going from 1 to 2 is hard. But because you're still learning, like, okay, now I have to be at 2 places at once, right? And I don't have enough profit to really cover, the corporate team. But at 3, you can usually end up hiring a director of operations and then maybe even a CFO or type person, to help with your accounting, or at least fractional, right? And then that allows the restaurant owner to kind of get out of the day-to-day operations and to start to really think about the business, from outside of the business, which frees them up, right? And I think that's so. I know it sounds crazy, but
you don't have to do it by yourself. Like, InKind will help you.
Absolutely.
InKind will help you. Well, I will make sure to post all of this wealth of information with the show notes. I want to thank you again for talking with me today. I did not, of course, know your brother personally, but I cannot imagine that he would not be well proud of what you all are doing. So congratulations on all of the success, and thank you again for having me. If you are wanting to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me on Instagram at HeyKinTheBay. That has been this week's episode of the As Told By podcast, on location, a bonus episode from Austin, Texas. I'll see you next Tuesday with our regular schedule episode. Bye.